Hi, and first of all, sorry about the abrupt end in the previous video. I noticed an error and decided to re-record the last part in a separate video. So to recap, we have these three images, and I mentioned two solutions in the previous video, so I'm just going to explain a bit more visually the two approaches, basically. So imagine I have imagine these are game objects, right? Phaser game objects, image objects, image game objects. And one approach would be to disregard that one for now. We'll have these two game objects and we'll position them in the same place and we'll simply toggle the visibility of the tick, right? That is one of the solutions I talked about in the previous video. Another approach would be to work with just one game object and change its image instead, right? So in Figma here, I can go here and I can load, if I can remember the name, to check, I think it was checks, the other one basically, this one probably, right? And so by doing that, so I have this one game object here called empty, and I'm simply changing the game object's texture, right? That would be approach number two. This approach number two, or whatever you want to name it, is basically the approach we took with the button, right? We have the button, one image game object, and on hover we changed its texture, and on press we changed its texture, right? So to get back to why I had to record this again was because what I did in the previous take of this is that I actually did this instead. I had two game objects, and I intended to show this as the two game objects, but what I ended up showing was actually this, and I was toggling the visibility of that. And visually it looks good. You could do it that way. There's nothing wrong, but that's not what I was explaining. What I wanted to explain was the two different approaches when you have two different game assets like these, right? Imagine you didn't have this game asset. You only had these two to work with. In that case, you would have to take this approach. Or maybe there's another approach I'm not thinking of. But basically, apart from the two exercises giving you a little bit of a challenge and doing things a bit differently, there might be a legitimate use case when you just don't have all the assets, right? And so you'd have to take a different approach. But anyway, let's actually implement this. So basically what I have here is more or less where we left off in the previous video. If I make a copy of the button class, I can call it checkbox. And then this approach, I think it's good that I'll just take the one with the one image since it's called checkbox, and then I'll make a copy of this called checkbox2, and that will be the one with the two game objects. So over here, I actually kept the asset keys that I had already, because I already recorded this with those asset keys, and I also loaded in the images. So if we go over here, my public assets, I actually have the images. Anyway, so basically in this one, the checkbox one, we'll just keep the one with the one image object, right? Checkbox. So we'll only keep one game object's image. I only need the pointer down. I still need this to be interactive, this image game object. For the texture, I will not be using these. I'll be using checkbox empty. This is only one, right? We'll have checkbox empty and we'll have checkbox ticked. This is again the one where we flip the texture. So we'll start off with the checkbox empty. And I will not be needing these callbacks. All I need is this one. So I'll be basically flipping between the two, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to check that if this.image.texture, yep, I have the right completion. Yes. So if Let me get that out of the way. If the current texture is the checkbox empty, change the checkbox ticked, otherwise checkbox empty. And that should be enough if I actually bring this in my main menu and I set it to be width minus 200 away from the button so you can actually see it. I have this running and that's it working. Approach number 1, right? So now what you could also do, what I had done in the previous video also, was I also introduced a public get, and I had, I forgot exactly what I called it, but basically a way to for us to query the state of the checkbox, right? Without having to go digging into the internals of the image game object. So and basically it auto-completed it for me. So this is one way you could do it. And I like this way because we're not keeping any extra state, right? We are literally deriving whether we're checked or not. Basically, if the current texture is the checkbox ticked texture, then we are checked, right? That's why I had this window, the checkbox, and let's just keep this like the previous video where I actually showcase just is checked. As you can see, it's false when it's not, and it's true when it's checked. All right, so approach number 2 you could have done. I will copy paste that one and call it checkbox 2. This is going to be the one with 2 images where I have the empty. And this can be the other one, which is the tick image. And now I'll be needing 2. Obviously, I want them in the same position, right? So I'll keep the X and Y the same. So with that, I have both of my image game objects. What I need though is to set interactive on just one of them, on just this one, right? So if you remember, I want the area of this one to be clicked, right? And this will be embedded in it. So most likely they are the same size. I mean, over here, what's important is the actual size of the image, not the Figma boxes here, okay? So the actual size of the image, regardless. Whether or not they're the same, the ticked image is going to be contained in the checkbox, so I'm setting the checkbox image to be interactive, right? I'm going to listen on its pointer down. And when pointer down, I can actually remove these. Actually, what I want to do in this one, now I'm remembering that I want to start off with this .tick image as false. So if you remember, the API for it was set visible. Basically, on pointer down, I want to also set the the visibility of the tick image. But what I want to do is I want to, as the completion is showing, I want to flip the visibility, right? So the image, the tick image, set its visibility to whatever its current visible value is, negated, right? And that should be the logic to flip our checked and unchecked visibility. So to also have this getter basic, now we are deriving the state from tick image.visible. So this is even simpler than before because all I need to do is tick image.visible for the value of is checked. If I now head over and actually try and use this to avoid confusion, I will comment out the previous checkbox and have only the checkbox 2 as the one being rendered. And if you wanted to have them both, maybe you can render this at 280, for example. But let's see how that looks like. So now, as you can see, even the texture itself is quite distinctive, right? And I can use checkbox 2 dot is checked for the same false when it's not checked and true when it is checked. And yes, so that's basically it for this video. I'll leave them side by side. And yeah, I hope this was a fun exercise. Thank you for watching, and we'll continue in the next video where we'll talk more about Phaser events.